Got to show off the new digs. We waited long enough for this.
So pretty, isn't it?
Yes, it's so vast and expansive and beautiful, and we're very happy to be here. Time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. We start with the good. A father and son recreating an incredible photo 20 years later. Look at this. Officer Gould and his son posed for this picture back in 1998 with the caption, "When I get bigger, I'm going to be my dad's partner and catch bad guys and burglars." Well, the two recently posed again. This time, Officer Gould's son, all grown up, and a King County sheriff in Washington State. Very
how cool is that? Next, the bad. A woman selling a World War II-era bomb on eBay finds out it's a live explosive. The British mom had been letting her kids play with it because she thought it was an empty shell. She learned of its firepower when a prospective buyer warned her the bomb squad detonated it.
Wow.
Jeez.
Finally, the ugly. This is bad news. The World Cup is running out of beer.
Oh, no.
Fans hung out to dry because many Russian bars are running out of beer. The news only gets worse for soccer fans. Even the suppliers are running low. You know, some of those soccer games are a little bit boring if you don't have a couple of cocktails.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a good day.
See you later.
We want to solve this problem. We want to solve family separation. I don't want children taken away from parents. We need Democrat support.
In fact, the president alone can fix it with this flick of a pen by signing a presidential order.
Do you believe the political bias shown by this text had an effect on the initiation of the Russia investigation?
Mr. Chairman, that's a matter we've got under review and are looking at right now.
Peter Strzok has now been shown the door. According to his lawyer, the now infamous Trump-hating FBI agent has been escorted out of the FBI Bureau headquarters.
The United States is officially withdrawing from the UN Human Rights Council. For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a cesspool of political bias.
Right after he spoke to a group of business leaders, he took a moment to hug the American flag. He did that as "You can't always get what you want" played in the background.
It's like 1, 2, 3, just as easy as can be. Just the way you look at me, you make me smile. Ain't no need to complicate it, we both know.
Well, we're up to Wednesday, June 20th. Welcome aboard, folks. Fox and Friends, another slow news day yesterday, so we've really nothing to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to rerun some clips of us reacting to yesterday's news.
Wow.
Oh, man.
By the way, Florida Georgia Line's one of his new releases. It's already...
Thanks to you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Very good.
Brian made him famous.
It's about simple.
All right. We're going to keep it simple today and just tell you what's going on in the news. First of all, you know, the President of the United States went up to Capitol Hill to talk last night to the House Republicans, try to get something through. He said he endorsed both bills. On the way out, apparently an intern or somebody with a hard pass who had passage to the U.S. Rotunda said, "F you, Mr. Trump," because they didn't like
intern,
didn't like that. And as it turns out, members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus heckled him, which is extraordinary, as he was trying to leave his meeting.
And Kristen Nielsen, she was heckled at a Mexican restaurant. She was eating in D.C., and they were yelling, "Oh, here we go. Mr. President, don't you have kids? Don't you have kids?" The president's made it clear that he does not want, as every American, want these families to be separated. Listen to this.
We have a chance. We want to solve this problem. We want to solve family separation. I don't want children taken away from parents. And when you prosecute the parents for coming in illegally, which should happen, you have to take the children away. Now, we don't have to prosecute them, but then we're not prosecuting them for coming in illegally. That's not good. We want to end the border crisis by finally giving us the legal authorities and the resources to detain and remove illegal immigrant families altogether and bring them back to their country.
So the president, after he got screamed at and, you know, his security walked him through, he went into a closed-door meeting and he met with Republican House members. And he said he looked at both plans. He says, I'll back either one of them. It might be a mistake to not get behind one of them in particular. He also brought up the fact that Ivanka went up to him and said, basically, Dad, can you solve this? And his answer was essentially, this is a tough issue. We want to get to the bottom of it. Politically, it's also bad, but it's not about politics. It's about doing the right thing. So Republicans want to get to the bottom of it. They want to solve it. So they want to pass legislation which includes the end of separation and families. But Senator Schumer does not want that. He says, I just want the president to sign a executive order that says this is over. Why not solve the whole issue about border security in DACA? Because I think it's, in many respects, Democrats seem to be getting a lot of traction from it. In fact, here's what Senator Schumer tweeted. He batted like 6 of them. He says, Speaker Ryan wants to pass a massive bill that may not even pass the House and couldn't pass the Senate. And Senate GOP are supposedly eyeing a bill that Donald Trump wouldn't sign, even if it made it to his desk. And the president continues to try to use separated families and hostages in the Lake process. Anyone who believes this Republican Congress is capable of addressing this issue is kidding themselves. Donald Trump can end the crisis with a flick of a pen. He needs to do so now, and not the law are responsible for their separation of families. Donald Trump, as he continues, GOP senators and members of your own administration have confirmed this. You could reverse this terrible practice in a few minutes, but you refuse to lift a finger. You know what we'd be left with? So we'd be left with 250 kids a day coming to the country illegally. We'd be left with 80% coming without their parents, so separation wouldn't even apply, because out of the 13,000 that have come, over 2,000 have come without parents.
Well,
how does that solve the problem?
Clearly, Chuck Schumer just wants to keep the focus on Donald Trump. But here's the thing. If Chuck Schumer is not willing to fix it legislatively, how long is he willing to stand by that policy if Donald Trump digs in his heels and does not change anything? Keep in mind, last night at the meeting Brian was talking about, apparently members of the Republican caucus, the conference, wanted to ask him questions about this. He didn't take questions, did not engage in any sort of discussion, but he said, we have to pass something. We have to take care of separation. It's too nasty. It's just too nasty. But so clearly the members of the Republican Party wanted to press him on, what are we going to do about this? His answer is, Congress, fix it with some laws.
So Chuck Schumer's complaining because kids are being separated from their families.
Indeed.
Yet he wants the president to fix it with the stroke of a pen, and he is not willing to support legislation to fix it, right?
Right. So far, Orrin Hatch, among 12 other Senate Republicans, wrote to the Justice Department calling for a pause on the separation, which seems to make sense. It would diffuse it and allow us to maybe get out of it because emotions are running so high. Griff's going to have a little bit later, that story a little bit later. I think it would benefit everybody if maybe the president took some questions yesterday and heard some input from Republicans. Number two, I think if he picked one bill and said, I'm getting behind this, that is the direction a lot of his party members who are loyal to him, and some even on the fence, they'll say, I know exactly what he means.
Well, the Goodlatte bill really has no chance of passing. That's conventional wisdom on Capitol Hill. The other one has a slim chance, but there is a third way.
McCall?
There is a third way, which is something that we've heard from John Cornyn on the Senate side and also from Mark Meadows yesterday. They're introducing bills just to address exactly what we're talking about, the separation of the family.
No one wants the separation of kids, so Democrats and Republicans just need to get together, be on the same page, and figure this out.
All right, so let's talk about what you probably didn't see yesterday unless you picked it up streaming. Nobody was focusing on, or not enough people were focusing on what was happening. This electric hearing with Michael Horowitz, who's the IG, and in front of Republican and Democrat House members, 70 strong, who got about 5 minutes each to question him. This thing went over 5 hours. And we did get 2 more names of the so-called unnamed lawyers and unnamed FBI agents that were anti-Trump. I find it hard to believe that if a Democrat watched this and just read the text out loud, they wouldn't be just as upset as Republicans that the leadership of the FBI was this dug in against any candidate.
Well, the question is, did Peter Strzok's hate for this president, for President Trump, launch the FBI Russia probe? And if you look at the timeline, it looks suspicious because Comey recommended no criminal charges against Hillary Clinton on July 5th, 2016. A few weeks later, July 28th, the FBI initiated the Russia investigation. Then a few weeks after that, on August 6th, Strzok, leading the Russia investigation, sent these text messages with his lover, Lisa Page, and she texted him, "You are meant to protect the country from a menace."
So what the IG report is what sort of impact was Strzok's role in the Hillary Clinton email debacle. So here's an exchange between Mr. Goodlatte of Virginia and Mr. Horowitz of the Department of Justice.
Each institution has engaged in repeated stonewalling of Congress's constitutionally mandated oversight. The infamous text from Peter Strzok saying, "We will stop President Trump from taking office," which we received on the day of your report's release, is a prime example. Do you believe this text shows political bias?
I think as we found, it clearly shows a biased state of mind.
Do you believe the political bias shown by this text had an effect on the initiation of the Russia investigation?
And that's a matter we've got under review and are looking at right now.
And that particular passage where it's between Strzok and Page, where he's not going to become president, is he? We're going to stop him. That was without a doubt the most damaging evidence to suggest bias with these FBI agents. And now we know that 5 have been referred for investigation. But nonetheless, to Mr. Goodlatte's point, the Congress wound up with that text the day the IG report came out. You know, apparently they had members of Congress and the congressional investigators, they had the text before it, they had the text after it. But for some mysterious technical reason, that particular text
was left out,
was missing until the day the IG report came out.
And the way Trey Getty was able to drill down and get to that point was amazing. That's why he's going to be so missed. He is really zeroing in and pressed Horowitz in a way that said, how could you possibly, at the end of it, how could you possibly say there was no bias here? If you go into read the report, you can't possibly close it and say there's no bias.
No, he said there was bias. There was a lot of bias at the FBI, no doubt about it. But they said ultimately the bias did not impact the ultimate decision whether or not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. All right. So anyway, we're going to be talking about these stories and so much more in the headlines.
That's right. Outrage now in California as lawmakers are moving toward overhauling the use of force rules. The bill would alleviate the standard, or elevate, I should say, the standard for using deadly force from reasonable to necessary. Pro-police groups say that it could make officers hesitant to approach suspects out of fear that they could be prosecuted later on.
It always blows me away when law enforcement fear for their life only when they're facing black and brown people.
The measure is now headed for a second committee vote. North Korea now preparing to send the remains of up to 200 American service members killed during the Korean War. More than 36,000 Americans died in that war. Close to 7,700 remain unaccounted for. About 5,300 of those that were lost in North Korea. The exact time of the handoff is still in the works, and it comes after President Trump and Kim Jong-un's historical meeting this month in Singapore. President Trump heading to Minnesota today. It's his first visit to the land of 10,000 lakes since taking office. The president will hold a roundtable event with representatives from the mining and steel industry, followed by a rally in Duluth. President Trump will be joined by Republican congressional candidate Pete Staber, who is running in a traditionally Democratic district. And those are some of your headlines.
And that jet is parked out at LaGuardia right now.
Which I was reading. I didn't see it. What was the Trump jet?
The big one that still says Trump.
Sometimes you'll see it there. Yes.
It's just right there. All right. Meanwhile, it's 6:12 here in New York City. A lot of talk about what's happening in our southern border, on our southern border. So what's it really like? Griff Jenkins has been on the ground there, getting a firsthand look with Customs and Border Patrol, and his report is coming up next.
And you know my dog's Rocky and Apollo, but are they really smarter than cats? This morning, science has settled this age-old debate. By the way, all three of those people in that picture will be here Friday.
There's only one people there.
Oh, yeah. I consider it a person.
Well, as the immigration debate takes center stage nationwide and in our Congress, there are more than 16,000 agents policing our southern border at this hour, working to keep us all safe.
Griff Jenkins got a firsthand look at what it's like on the front lines.
More illegal immigrants have been apprehended crossing the U.S.-Mexico border here in the Rio Grande Valley sector than at any other point of the entire U.S.-Mexico border.
many of them taking this very path.
So, Griff, this is one of the crossings that is exclusively used by the cartels to smuggle family units. And you can see all the trash, huge numbers.
This looks like a children's backpack. Chief, you see here a diaper. So clearly very small.
Yes.
An infant was brought here.
That group that we apprehended, that group of 17, crossed this very spot today.
They did, this
Yes.
actual spot. Chief Padilla has brought us where 17 migrants have been stopped, apprehended for crossing illegally. Chief, what do we got here?
Griff, so what you have here is a group of illegal aliens, primarily composed of family units and potentially some unaccompanied children.
Chief, can you ask her if she's frightened coming as an unaccompanied minor?
She has heard that we treat them right.
She has heard that we treat them right?
So this gentleman is saying he's coming from Guatemala, zero idea on a zero tolerance policy.
Will these children be separated right now from their parents? Will it happen at the center? What will happen to them?
Absolutely not. They are transported to the processing center. At that time, we start running checks on the adults, see if there's any criminal history, any immigration history. They're processed accordingly. If they are eligible for prosecution, we will prosecute the adults that have entered illegally. When somebody is put through the process of prosecution, they are temporarily separated from the children, just like any U.S. citizen would be. It's a difficult situation, not ideal, but we reach numbers that are just, become a crisis. We need to get Congress to do something with the immigration law and make sure that we can address the situation. These people are not trying to evade the Border Patrol. They're actually looking for us to turn themselves in. And what happens with that is if there is no consequence to an illegal entry, it keeps growing and growing and growing.
Then the calls came in. More illegals attempting to cross, and the chase was on.
Right now, this is a pursuit of an agent. A sensor from a tower set it off, and we're following up on this right now.
These 5 were a group of 13 that the helicopter spotted. They're actually still working some of the group. Of course, we chased one back. That's what we call a turn back. Back in the water, so again, that's what we call a turn back when they make it back into Mexico.
So you got away, but at least you turned him back.
It's a turn back. He'll be back, and we'll be there.
And they will be there. There's a story out this morning that apparently the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, is considering using DNA testing to make sure that the children match the people who say they are their parents.
Yeah. It's a desperate situation. Evidently, John Kelly, who has the most experience in the area, was in charge of Southern Command when he was an active Marine, saw this as a problem, knows the countries involved, thinks the ultimate answer will be those countries cracking down on their citizens before they leave the country.
And I think the president yesterday at the business meeting suggested cutting off all aid to the nations that do not cooperate. Meanwhile, speaking of the United States, the U.S. is out of the UN Human Rights Council.
For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a protector of human rights abusers and a cesspool of political bias.
Well, White House National Security Advisor John Bolton will be joining us promptly to react to the news.
And we told you about the principal sparking outrage for inviting an anti-cop extremist to Career Day. An officer whose kids went to that school will join us next.
Well, we got some quick headlines for you. A water main break flooding the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas overnight. Water pouring onto the first floor of the convention center, forcing 1,000 people to evacuate. Crews working through the night to clean up the mess. And the world's largest airline getting back on track following a week full of cancellations. A computer glitch forced American Airlines regional carrier PSA to cancel about 2,500 flights. The bug impacted crew scheduling and flight tracking systems, but they hope to be getting back on track. All right, Brian?
Back to pen and paper. Meanwhile, a Chicago public school principal suddenly retiring after she outraged parents by inviting, get this, an anti-police extremist to speak to elementary school students on Career Day. Our next guest, children previously attended that very school, is an active law enforcement officer. He was also a member of the local council that originally elected the principal. Fernando Flores joins us right now. Fernando, how did this happen? I understand this guy who was Ethan Ethos was talking about poetry and activism, and it suddenly went off the rails. In what way?
Well, in the fact that he started attacking the police, obviously he didn't realize the audience he was speaking to, because up in Wildwood, they're predominantly city workers, fire department, police officers. Well, half of those kids in those classes are police officers' children. Well, when you tell these children that your parents are killers and they're abusive and that they're racist, obviously somebody's going to take a little bit to heart. And these children were very upset. They went home, told their parents, and then it just snowballed and escalated at that point.
I mean, evidently, if you look at his social media, it's pretty apparent how he feels. After an officer was killed, he posted online, F him and F his entire family. He also posted the term CPDK, which apparently stands for Chicago Police Department Killer. So he's pretty clear in what he believes. So why was it necessary to book him as a poet?
That's a good question, especially when he touted himself as a poet and an activist. Okay, that's fine. I don't understand how lucrative that can be. But to take off on a tangent and, again, start attacking the police and telling these children that their parents are killers is absolutely incorrect. And it's his anti-police bias seems not only here in Chicago, but across the nation. And it's dangerous at this point where we're at.
So the principal has retired. Was that the right move?
I think she did what she thought was best for her.
Because it was going to get worse?
I couldn't see it get any better.
Right. What is your sense about grade school kids? I'll never forget Ron Kovic, who was pretty angry after the Vietnam War, spoke to our class when I was in grammar school and basically traumatized the entire place because of his views on war. I mean, should there be a screening process before anyone's booked, like they have in college?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody needs to be vetted. I mean, how easy is it to find this kid's name and look him up on Facebook and find out exactly what it's about, what he's promoting, and see what his rhetoric is?
What are the parents saying? Have you heard a lot of people rally behind you guys, or the other way?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's very positive. Wildwood is a very tight-knit community, and they all came together because they know this is for the betterment not only of their children, but for their neighborhood.
I understand that it's becoming Chicago's becoming the murder capital of the country. What is your message to those on the outside, even people watching in Washington right now? What do you men and women need?
Well, as it sits right now, over the weekend, we had 41 people shot. We had 9 homicides. None of those are police involved. How are the police the problem at this point? I think together, the community, together with the police, need to come to some kind of accord. I'm not really sure there is no clear-cut answer at this point, but something needs to be done.
National Guard. That could be the answer. The president talked about that when he was a candidate. Fernando Flores, thanks so much.
Brian, you take care. Have a great weekend.
All right. Just know we don't echo those sentiments here, and that's unacceptable, I think, from everyone watching. Coming up straight ahead, Ambassador Nikki Haley ripping the United Nations yesterday as the U.S. withdraws from the Human Rights Council. Listen.
For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a protector of human rights abusers and a cesspool of political bias.
White House National Security Advisor John Bolton here to react live next. Plus, parents brawling on the sidelines of a girls' softball game, the wild fight caught on camera. But first, put on your happy face. Happy birthday to Nicole Kidman. She is 51 years old today and married an Australian. I forgot his name.
For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a protector of human rights abusers and a cesspool of political bias. The council ceases to be worthy of its name. Such a council, in fact, damages the cause of human rights.
So when Nikki Haley gave those words at the UN and offered them right across town in New York City, many people thought of John Bolton, who's felt the same way for the longest time, who was once a UN ambassador for the United States of America, and now he's National Security Advisor at the White House. So, John Bolton, great to see you again. Now that you're not on the payroll, I know you're here voluntarily. But what were your thoughts as Nikki Haley was saying those words behind the microphone? You wanted that decades ago, right?
Yeah, I thought she was exactly right. I thought Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was right on target as well. You know, this decision in many respects has been decades in the making. The Human Rights Council, its predecessor, the Human Rights Commission, were really not places where human rights was a priority, strange as that may seem. So it's clearly the right decision to get off. It's the right decision to defund the Human Rights Council and the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And it's something I think that goes to the broader question of American sovereignty. You know, we're actually self-governing in this country. We have a constitution. We make our share of mistakes and we correct them. We don't need advice by the UN or other international bodies on how to govern ourselves.
All right. So, John, officially leaving over a bias against Israel. And in fact, between the years of 2006 through 16, this commission condemned Israel 68 times, condemned Syria 20 times, and condemned Iran 6 times for comparative purposes. But as well, it is raising some eyebrows, us pulling out of this council, because it follows one day after their high commissioner criticized the United States over President Trump's immigration policies, separating families.
Well, it had nothing to do with that. This decision was made by President Trump weeks ago. It followed long decision-making and review of the Human Rights Council's performance. And as I say, it's something that reflects a widely held view in the United States. It's one reason why in 2006, when I was up at the UN, we voted against creating this council because we said it was not adequately reformed. It would not change its behavior from its predecessor, Human Rights Commission. And the last 12 years have simply proven that. So I think what Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley announced yesterday was exactly the right thing. It does have these broader implications for American sovereignty around the world. You know, we did talk about Israel because it's singled out unfairly, but in many respects, Israel is, as the saying goes, a canary in the mine shaft for the United States. Countries that attack Israel do it because they think it's easier, but much of their criticism is really aimed at us.
You know, there are many people watching that live in the middle of the country that are just, you know, trying to get dressed for work this morning. They don't know what this council is. They don't know what these commissions and these committees are. Will you, just in layman's terms, tell us, for those folks watching that have never heard of this council, what exactly it means to them at home?
Well, I think getting off the council is an assertion of American determination to stick by its constitution and not to recognize that there's some higher authority at the UN, whether it's the council or the High Commissioner for Human Rights, to judge our performance or to give us advice on how to implement the Constitution. We're perfectly capable of doing that ourselves. We make our share of mistakes and we correct our mistakes. That's what this is about, self-government.
So, John Bolton, we know the drama happened a couple of weeks ago as the President of the United States went to Singapore to meet with the North Korean leader. I know you were there every step of the way. What would you say is the most encouraging and discouraging thing that happened during the Singapore summit? We know that the North Korean leader is meeting with all world leaders maybe for the first time. He was in China a couple of days ago. What did we get out of that?
Well, I think the president made it very clear to Kim Jong-un he faces a decisive, a dramatic choice. Whether after decades of development, North Korea is prepared to give up its nuclear weapons program, its chemical and biological weapons, its ballistic missiles, and turn away from that approach to its international relations. And if it does, can have a very different future.
What do you
think?
Doesn't? Did they indicate to you, John, that they were willing to do this for the first time in your career?
Well, they've said they would do it, and I think now we'll see Secretary Mike Pompeo and others meeting with them, discussing it with them, and we'll find out soon enough, I think, whether they've made this strategic decision.
Well, if they do, then eventually the sanctions come off, at least some of them. How close are we to that?
Well, I think the first move here is really for North Korea to make. They've said they want complete denuclearization. Now we're going to have to talk about how to achieve that. And I think you will see diplomatic engagement proceed very quickly. President Trump's been quite clear he doesn't intend to make the mistakes of past administrations, so lengthy delaying talks, I think, are not in store. I think we'd like to move quickly, and if they're serious, North Korea should want to move quickly too.
And if they're not, the sanctions go back on, and we urge the world community to do the same. What if the genie's out of the bottle and they won't?
Well, I think the president's made it very clear that they're facing a choice, and that until we get real evidence, palpable, concrete steps of denuclearization, all the sanctions will stay in force. We're urging everybody to continue them, and we'll watch very closely what North Korea not only says, but what it does.
Smart. Proof is in the pudding. Thanks so much, John Bolton. We appreciate you
Glad to
being
be
with
with
us live. All right, now to some more headlines. A convicted rapist caught on camera trying to kidnap a jogger is arraigned from his hospital bed. Gordon Lyons pleading not guilty to attempted kidnapping and assault while covering his face with a sheet. Lyons was driving down a Massachusetts street when he pulled over and tried to snatch a woman that was jogging by. She fought back. Someone watching called the cops. Lyons was convicted of sexual assault back in 1978. Fired FBI Director James Comey now firing back at Hillary Clinton.
Even at this late date, she doesn't understand what the investigation in her case was about. It was not about her use of a personal email system. It was about communicating about classified topics on that system.
Comey responding to Clinton, who tweeted, quote, "But my emails?" as her reaction to news that Comey once used his personal email for FBI business.
Yeah, so he might have done something very similar. So good
Might
luck.
have. I think
James
he did.
Comey's always a million miles above it. I'm sorry, you still have more to read?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
All right, next story. Punches go flying after a massive brawl breaks out between parents during a girls' 12 and under softball tournament. Watch this. The brawl started as a shouting match between parents from competing teams. Both teams competing in the Tennessee tournament were disqualified. No one was hurt or arrested. Is that what your girls' soccer?
It has not
soccer
happened
games
like
look
that, but it's gotten close a few
Wait,
times.
who's this?
Go ahead, please.
All right, we all know so much about Brian. He loves his dogs. They're named Rocky and Apollo.
That's all I've told you.
And now we finally have an answer to the age-old question. Which are smarter, cats or dogs? The answer, drum roll, dogs. Researchers at a university in England finding dogs have more brain power. Dogs have around 530 million neurons, and cats only have 250.
Well, they got smaller heads.
That's true.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
does that have anything to do with it?
Right.
Right.
Not as much space in there for the neurons.
Exactly.
If dogs are so smart, why do they drink out of the toilet?
Because it's there, and you left the toilet seat up, Steve.
Wait a minute, your dogs have a lot of neurons because these are the biggest dogs you've ever seen. They're
Right,
like bears.
and they are extremely smart. And guess what? For the first time since really their 12-week point, they'll be back in studio because I told them about the new studio.
Friday, right?
Friday is Take Your Dogs to Work Day.
How do you even get them in your car?
We don't know how exactly we're doing it yet.
Is
and
Dawn
what am I
coming
going
with
to do
you?
when I'm on radio?
Brian, your dogs are really smart. They'll figure a way to town.
Right.
You watch.
They're not cats.
You got
All
to
right.
take them to radio too.
Meanwhile, it's time for some extreme weather. And Janice, look at that. It looks like some severe stuff in Kansas and Nebraska.
You're
and
right.
Colorado.
Look at the storm reports, several tornado reports as well outside of the Denver area. Take a look at this video. Thankfully, no one was injured during the making of this video, but that is an incredible looking tornado. I mean, it looks like something out of a movie. This is Weld County, Colorado, and this is right outside of Denver. No one has been injured with these severe storms. Thank goodness for that. Look at those horses. They're just like, doo-doo-doo. Right, absolutely. How many neurons in a horse?
70.
Okay, let's take a look at the past 24 hours across portions of Texas and Louisiana, because this is a concern. We've got all of this tropical moisture moving into this region and the potential for flash flooding. We've had several inches of rain already. On top of that, especially across South Texas, 4 to 6, even 8 inches around the Corpus Christi area. So that's going to be a concern. Here are your highs today across the country. A little cooler than average across the northern Rockies, the northern plains. We do have the potential for strong to severe thunderstorms across the Plains Straits, stretching in towards the mid-Atlantic, and it remains warm across the southeast as well as the southern plains. And look at Phoenix. And by the way, tomorrow is the first official day of summer. It's here, my friends.
The longest day of the year, right?
Yes, and then it starts to get shorter and shorter.
Oh.
Right.
But we'll love it for now.
Because the sun goes down, but it's still the same amount of time in a day.
24 hours.
Right, very good point.
sunshine.
A lot of neurons up there, Brian Kilmeade.
Thank you.
Tons. All right.
I
James,
beat the
thank you.
dog by a mile.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, President Trump is making the economy great again. Food stamp enrollment is now at an 8-year low. What's behind the drop? Well, we're going to break down the numbers next with an expert.
Plus, you know him and you love him as Superman, but now Dean Cain is trading in that cape for a badge. And he joins us in his brand new uniform. That's coming up next.
Some quick headlines now. How do I know? Look at the title. Pot smokers now have nothing to fear in the Big Apple. The New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who never feared pot, announcing that new policy.
Under the new policy, New Yorkers with no prior record will receive a summons instead of an arrest for smoking marijuana publicly.
The changes come after critics accuse the NYPD of targeting minorities for low-level marijuana crimes. I move on. Canada is now the second country in the world to fully legalize marijuana. The Senate passing on a landmark bill paving the way for recreational cannabis to be legally bought and sold as early as September. Under the law, Canadians 18 years or older will be able to grow up to 4 plants and carry up to 30 grams for personal use. But Canadian football will still only have 3 downs. Steve?
All right, Brian, thanks. Meanwhile, food stamp enrollment plummeting to an 8-year low. The Department of Agriculture reporting a drop in SNAP participants to just over 40 million. So what's going on? Our next guest says he thinks it's largely in part to President Trump's policies. Joining us right now to explain is the Vice Chairman of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, Mark Little. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing okay. So why has food stamp enrollment dropped to an 8-year low?
I tell you, Steve, first I have to say the dramatic reduction of 2.2 million food stamp recipients in the first 18 months of a Donald Trump presidency is a step in the right direction, because we know that a family of 4 receives an average of $465 a month in food stamp benefits. We know that's just not enough to sustain a family. And so it's a win because these folks are getting back to work. It's a win for the president. It's a win for the nation. I think there are a couple of factors that contribute to that dramatic reduction. I think the president has unleashed free enterprise. He unleashed free enterprise by implementing rules, by cutting federal regulations, by signing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that did exactly what it was intended to do, which was to create jobs.
Absolutely. And speaking of the jobs, right now there are more jobs than people, and we've got some stats we're going to put up on the screen. Right now, 223,000 jobs were added in May. The unemployment rate is at an historic low, 3.8%, and the labor participation rate has gone up as well. So if people want to find a job, there are jobs out there. But also at the same time, Mark, I understand the administration has clamped down on food stamp fraud.
Yes, the administration is doing a great deal of work, both at the federal and the state level. And as you may know, in April of this year, the president signed an executive order strengthening the workforce requirement across all the agencies, including the USDA and HUD. So those things certainly contribute to where we are. And as the stats show, Steve, we've got a workforce participation rate of 62.7%, and I believe it's climbing. And let's not forget, we've got the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans in recorded history.
All right, put it all together. Fewer people need assistance. Of course, anybody who needs it, the government program is there to help them. Mark Little, the Vice Chairman of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, thank you very much for joining us live from LA, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, still ahead on this Wednesday, Jason Chaffetz is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about the IG report. Acting ICE Director Thomas Homer, we're going to be talking to him about what's going on our southern border, and Congressman from Florida, Ron DeSantis. So we got a busy 2 hours coming up. Plus, the booming economy is helping these two business owners thrive, and they're helping our heroes in return. You're going to hear their stories. Thumbs up coming up next.
All right, we are seeing more jobs, higher wages, and a surging economy. So how are entrepreneurs taking advantage of this economic boom, or are they?
Well, why don't we ask two business owners? Sean Matson is the president and co-founder of Strike Force Energy and a former Navy SEAL. And Aaron Nearbon is the founder of Troops Direct. Thank you both for being here.
Good morning.
So good to see you again. Tell us about the transition from the battlefield to the business world. I mean, the economy is booming. Has it been pretty easy for you under this administration?
It has been, and I think the thing is, the policymakers obviously make the policies and put this, and then it's us as entrepreneurs out there to we're the boots on the ground type guys that are pushing this and taking the what they give us and leeway and things, and then actually implementing that and driving and helping the economy.
When I introduced you, I totally ignored this amazing suit. Are you selling this too?
No, this is a nice suit from Shinesty. They're good guys, and we like to reference.
The great thing, Sean, is Americans, for the most part, love to support our vets when they start a business. And you found that, haven't you?
Yes. Typically, I think it's 2/3 of Americans typically like to try to buy from veterans or American-made companies. So that's a huge number. And then, we have a great product, but also we have a social mission impact, and giving back to what we do with Troops Direct and other organizations that we've partnered with out throughout the years.
All right, so Aaron, tell me about Troops Direct and how it's been affected as more people have maybe some disposable income.
Sure. Well, Troops Direct is the only nonprofit of its type, and what we do is we supply American forces around the globe with any critically needed items that they can't access through their supply chain. So no cookies and candies, but things like medical equipment, helmets, whatever it is, we can get it to any American around the globe.
Wait, what do you mean helmets? They can't get helmets?
Sean, why don't you comment on that?
Sometimes it does become a difficulty getting a newer helmet and things, and that's actually a Team Wendy helmet. The outer skin of it is a matte box skin. It's one of my other companies that I own. We do a lot of innovative technologies and products that we sell back to the government.
Gotcha. But see, the public thinks that our service members have everything they need.
Yeah.
And what really happens is so many forces, especially the special operations units, are deploying so fast nowadays, as we see, that often what they need, they just can't get.
Right,
and so
Sean,
we're supplying it for free to them.
Strike Force Energy,
So
right? You add it in water. How is your company helping Troops Direct?
Our summer campaign, Give Back campaign, is we have a discount code that's Send It. We are taking and matching every order from now until Labor Day. So if you buy a box, we're donating a box. We're going to donate it to Troops Direct, and they're going to send it downrange.
Exactly. Right. Well, guys, thank you very much, Sean Matson and Aaron from Troops Direct. It's the flavor of freedom.
That's right.
Before we go, I want to present all of you with a Troops Direct
God bless
lapel
you.
pin.
Thank
These
you.
only go to our closest and most special supporters, and Fox and Friends has been with us since day one. So thank you for your guys' support so much.
Thank you for
Thanks,
for
guys.
our troops.
Meanwhile, coming up next hour, the president huddles with Republicans. What do they say? What will they do? We'll discuss it with Jason Chaffetz.